Wow, contributions that engineers have made to this country and to our society, tons. Building things, building this country, railroads, cities, dams, riverways, everything we do, everything we build in this country requires engineers. So that's a bit of a lob question from engineers to say, what do you think that engineers have contributed? Obviously a huge amount. You know, my dad was trained as an engineer, one of my sons is trained as an engineer. We wouldn't be the country we are if it hadn't been for engineers. So the question is, what initiatives can we take to attract more people to encourage innovation in this country? And my answer is, actually, we need to ask more of the engineers, because it's the engineers who are actively involved in so much of what is growing and developing in this country, see where we're not actually doing as well as we can. This is a classic example of where government tends to not engage with the private sector in dealing with the challenges that face us as a country. We have an awful lot of young people who are graduating but not actually finding jobs that are the jobs that they would want to be able to get given their training. We have an awful lot of members in the private sector who are saying we need people with skills, but we are also not apparently providing those skills in our own educational system, and we have companies who are bringing in temporary foreign workers. This is a challenge, a really big challenge for the country. We have, in the next 10 years, we're likely to have approximately 400,000 Aboriginal Canadians entering the workforce. An awful lot of those will not even have high school. That's a problem for the country, that's a problem for them, that's a problem for all that we do in terms of encouraging our prosperity. And so when we talk about what are the initiatives that we need to engage in order to encourage innovation, in order to encourage invention, which is, as you know, different, to encourage greater development and greater commercialization of our innovation and our R&D, we need to actually ask the engineers, because you know better than politicians what it is on the ground that would encourage all of those things. So let's talk more. What are my thoughts about diversity in the engineering profession and in Parliament? Well, that's interesting. I mean, diversity has a number of different aspects to it. Gender diversity, cultural diversity. It's interesting to me in terms of gender diversity. You know, we just elected our 6th female premier in this country. Whereas 6 years ago, in 2006, when I was running for the leadership, the first time, I had sitting Liberal MPs, sitting Liberal members of Parliament say to me, Martha, we think you're great, great qualifications, we know you do a great job, but we just don't think Canada's ready for a woman Prime Minister. Of course, even though they were members of Parliament, I had to remind them that we'd already had one. But it was a disappointing comment, I will say. And the good news is that 7 years now on, nobody's saying that anymore. We do make progress in the country. We can make progress. I've had so many discussions with people at different engineering schools, people who attend engineering. There is a challenge in terms of diversity. We know that. In my case, I'm more aware of perhaps the gender diversity or lack thereof, but we are improving, and we've seen it in other faculties, we've seen it in other professions where the number of women has increased dramatically. We still have a way to go in engineering, but I'm confident that the more people we have of different color, of different gender, of different backgrounds, the more that will encourage even more to participate. So the question is, what advice do I have for engineers who want to get involved in public policy? Goodness, I have done, I don't know how many panels, discussions with engineers, with the provincial engineers in Ontario in particular, but in other parts of the country as well. Any of you who are watching this know that I've been a big encourager of having more engineers participate in politics. I like to have more business people. I'd like to see more engineers. I'd like to see more people involved in politics for whom spin really doesn't work. It's the sense of analysis, it's the sense of having to rely on facts in order to make decisions. That's important in politics, and we don't have enough of it. And so hence my encouragement of engineers to participate more. Those who are interested, probably not enough time to talk about it here, but I have said this at every panel I've done. Perhaps not in the middle of this campaign because we're really busy, but after this campaign is over, info@marthahallfindlay.ca, more than happy to engage in discussions on the specifics of getting more involved in politics, for example. Getting more involved in policy. There's also there are a number of avenues that are available. Again, info@marthahallfindlay.ca. Would love to have more of a more detailed conversation on what works in terms of public policy, what doesn't, some of the challenges of politics. But it's all it's enough to say that it's really important to have people willing to step up and be engaged. And I'd love to be able to help and provide any thoughts and advice to anybody who's interested to ask.